The verdict is still out on the cause of the crash of Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752. The U.S. and its allies believe the plane was shot down by an Iranian missile, possibly unintentionally, as it took off from Tehran.
All 176 people on board were killed. Iran has denied the allegation, insisting the plane crashed as a result of a technical malfunction. Iran's civil aviation chief says he is certain the plane was not hit by a missile.
Now, he says anything said before data from the plane's flight recorders is revealed is not an expert opinion. And there is speculation in Tehran that the plane's black boxes will be opened within 24 hours.
U.S. intelligence suggests that the aircraft has been tracked by Iranian radar and that 2 missiles were fired from an air defense system. Tehran has dismissed the claims as U.S. psychological warfare.
Meanwhile, Iran has invited Boeing and transport safety officials from the U.S. and Canada to take part in investigations. Iran previously said that it would not involve the U.S. or Boeing, nor hand over the black boxes to them.
The Ukrainian airliner went down just hours after Iran fired over a dozen missiles at 2 Iraqi air bases housing U.S. forces. Omid Kazani tells us what Iran could face if the black boxes prove missiles brought the plane down.
I think if this is finally be proven that the plane has been shot down by a missile, even if it's unintentional, I think this is going to be a huge embarrassment. And though I think finally it will be somehow attributed to the special circumstance of that night, which the whole country, I mean all the army units, IRGC units, were on full alert for the possible U.S. airstrike on Iranian targets. I think whatever the result of this technical examination, technical international investigation, I think this is a huge blow to the system. If this is proven to be a mistake, even if it's a mistake by Iranian artillery units.
Now, for more on this story, we're joined in studio by Guido Giannasso, professor in global leadership from Nanyang Business School in Singapore. He's also a former executive committee member of the International Air Transport Association. So, Professor Giannasso, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me here.
And tell us then your view, based on what you've seen from all the reports and what you sort of gathered. Is it possible that a missile could have caused this plane crash?
It is possible. And I would say it's also likely to be the case. There have been several instances in the last few years where a missile had hit a civilian aircraft. So it's definitely a possibility.
And what's leading you to think along those lines?
Well, I would say the circumstances. There was a moment of very high military tension. The fact that the aircraft was almost new, 4 years, a Boeing 737-800. 4 years of life for an aircraft of that nature means the plane was new, so very unlikely to have a technical accident. So these are all circumstances that encourage to think in the direction of.
So if it is a missile attack, what are investigators then looking out for on the ground? You know, what are the evidence that will point that it is not a technical error, but yet it was a missile attack on the plane?
Well, first of all, the intelligence of several countries have pointed up to the fact that they have tracked 2 signals that suggest that 2 SA-15, who are surface-to-air Russian missiles, were launched, actually, and the bleep of an explosion. This is quite strong evidence, and this seemed to be the case. This seemed to be the report from different Western intelligence. And then, of course, there is the black box and a number of other processes that have to be followed trying to investigate the causes. However, if the suggestion that the 2 tracking of the missiles are there, then the conclusions are pretty obvious, I would say.
But it doesn't matter though who you believe, though, because Iran is saying that it wasn't anything that came from any missiles that they were or would have been firing. at the time, and they have seemed to be opening the door for investigators to come in and
Right.
discover that.
Absolutely, and we have to be cautious, and we have to remain open to different possibilities until the very end. But we also need to recognize, again, the circumstances of this accident and the fact that the Iranian government finds itself in an extremely embarrassing situation, right? Few hours after they launch a battery of missiles on U.S. bases in Iraq, a civil aircraft happens to crash on their soil. So it's a pretty difficult time for them.
Right, it seems to be a very bad coincidence. And you know, Canadian Prime Minister says that it was actually an accident. Can such accidents be avoided?
Well, first of all, is it an accident? Assuming that the aircraft was actually hit by surface-to-air missiles, I think it's probably the case. It's very difficult to think that it was a deliberate attack. It wouldn't make any sense. Iran is trying to build the support of the public opinion in the region on their fight against the U.S., so this accident definitely doesn't help them. It happened on their soil. There are 78 of their own nationals who have died, so it's very difficult to think that if it was an attack, it was deliberate. It is possible, yes. What can be done? Well, the best can be done is for airlines to avoid flying over areas where there are turbulences, where there are tensions, where there are important military exercises. So, yeah.
Well, we saw that the aviation authority, flights were rerouted to avoid flying over that region, but clearly not soon enough. Aviation authorities also will be looking at this and trying to find lessons that they can learn?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For airlines and for aviation authorities, there are difficult decisions to take, because how do you balance risk avoidance on the one hand and cost control on the other? Changing the route of an aircraft brings hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional costs. So you can do it, you have to do it when the risk is significant enough to justify its cost.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, sharing your expertise with us. Professor Guido Giannasso from the Nanyang Business School, Singapore, a former member as well, a committee member of the International Air Transport Association.
Thank you very much.